people try to usurp religion for their own political gain, it is incredibly dangerous. King Uzziah was marked on the forehead with a rash. Today, we might look out and see people have usurped religion, also marked with a sign on their head. It is red, and it has the words, "Make America Great Again," as a sign of how religion has been usurped by the religious right. Folks who are using religion to proclaim values that are contrary to absolutely everything that Jesus taught.
This is Progressive Reverend Dr. Caleb J. Lines. According to his website, he's currently serving as the senior minister of University Christian Church in San Diego, California.
And you see, the moral of this story is that those who are faithful, like the priests in the temple, are called to stand up to hypocrisy, both political and religious hypocrisy, and to say that this is unacceptable according to our faith, according to the values that we believe. Because what we believe is liberating love. What we believe is passionate peace. What we believe is jarring justice. And if religion is being used in a way that is not creating that, it is false. It is anti-Christ.
This takes some serious kahunas, not gonna lie. And he's got a lot of really great uploads.
Jesus said, you love, period. Jesus said, you welcome people, period. Jesus said, you extend radical hospitality, period. Jesus did not say one single word of condemnation about anyone based on sexual orientation or gender identity. In fact, the only mention Jesus really makes of it is this passage in Matthew. Maybe you're familiar with it. It's actually an affirmation. It's buried in ancient language, and it's surrounded by this weird teaching about divorce. But what Jesus said is this, that if you are a eunuch, and you have been a eunuch since birth, that was an ancient way of saying that if you differed from what was expected in terms of what we would call today sexual orientation or gender identity, that if you were a eunuch and you had been a eunuch from birth, that you were loved by God.
From understanding how the right misconstrues intentionally the Bible with the LGBTQ plus community.
The MAGA movement is a false god and is a false idol. And to let a picture prove my point, let's look at a picture that I would like to show you. The picture on the left is the ancient Israelites worshiping the golden calf. The picture on the right is the golden trump. This is an AI-generated video, image still, that was released by the White House about Trump's Gaza. That is, Trump's plan to get rid of Palestinians and to make Gaza into a resort. The MAGA movement is a false idol. Human beings want to do this, you see. We are given the path of love and liberation. We are given the path of progress. And all too often, the path that we choose is the path of regression.
His critiques of MAGA.
This is how liberty dies, with thunderous applause. And how does it happen? One person, Palpatine, comes up with a plot in which he lies, he spreads misinformation, and finds a scapegoat, in this case, the Jedi, blames it all on them, and uses that as an excuse to grab power. Sound familiar? A little bit, right? It's a reminder of how delicate republics are, even constitutional republics with representative democracies, how quickly they can fall. And it is a reminder that there is a call to embrace the light side, to embrace the side that values diversity of opinion, diversity of belief, that values diversity of leadership, and embraces that. It is a reminder that with the fragility of republics, that we all have an obligation to stand on behalf of those whose rights are being oppressed, whose rights are being taken away. And so in the United States today, as we see the possibility of a republic that is shaky at the moment, it is our obligation, our duty, to continue to fight for justice.
And of course, Donald John Trump.
Last night, President Trump signed an executive order banning both direct and indirect federal funding for biased media, including PBS and NPR. It's worth noting that independent evaluators have consistently named both PBS and NPR as the least biased, the best places, the most neutral to get your news. This isn't about biased media. It's about controlling the narrative. It's about state-sponsored propaganda, because whenever the government controls the media, they can get away with more abuses of power. This should deeply concern us as Americans because it is destabilization of our democracy. One thing that we can do is, if we are able, give our money to independent journalism like PBS and NPR so that we can continue to get the information that we need. This should also offend us as people of faith. Over and over again in the biblical narrative, we hear about unjust leaders who usurp power and about how God uses faithful people to humble those leaders. May God use us, people of faith and people of good conscience, to humble Donald Trump as we go out to the streets and express our dissatisfaction, and as we vote with our dollars to fund independent journalism. May it be so. Amen.
But why do so many on the religious right adore him? One passage reads, "Evangelicals were looking for a protector, an aggressive, heroic, manly man, someone who wasn't restrained by political correctness or feminine virtues, someone who would break the rules for the right cause, try as they might, and they did try. No other candidate could measure up to Donald Trump when it came to flaunting an aggressive, militant masculinity. He became, in the words of his religious biographers, the ultimate fighting champion for evangelicals." And then you follow up, 81% of evangelicals voted for Trump. In that first passage, seeing them label him the ultimate fighting champion while he has a clear direct friendship with Dana White and the UFC stuck out to me. And this militant masculinity is all fugazi because, as we know, he got out of serving. So why did they throw their support behind Donald Trump?
Yeah, he was, initially they were not fully behind him because they didn't know who he was. You know, he was this unknown quantity. And yeah, wasn't he a Democrat before? And wasn't he pro-choice? And as they got to know him over the course of the primary season, you see evangelicals start to line up behind him. And a lot of times people want to excuse evangelical support for Trump because, oh, well, what was the option? Hillary Clinton? No, it was, it was a crowded Republican primary. And what you saw is, as Trump made himself known to the American people and to evangelicals, they picked him. They picked him. And the first sign of this was a poll in August 2015. 2015 was the first sign that we saw evangelical support lining up behind Donald Trump. That was very early on. And I remember at that point because Russell Moore said, I think it was the Washington Post, he wasn't buying it. He says, this is the reality TV stage of the campaign. And he didn't know a single evangelical pastor who supported Trump. So, he's kind of an eye roll. They're just trying to make evangelicals look crazy and smear us and, no, not taking this seriously. Well, of course, we know what happened. Russell Moore ended up being pushed out of his leadership position in the Southern Baptist Convention because he would not bend the knee to Trump. and because he cared about the abuse of women. Those two things did him in. Within a few years, he's out. But
Which says
what we
so much.
saw, yeah, it says so much, right? Those were his sins, irredeemable sins. And what you saw is conservative evangelicals, as they recognized who he was and what he said he would do for them. He said, "I will give Christians power." And you saw leaders start to line up behind him, but it didn't start at top down. It started from the grassroots, and it started from, early on, Robert Jeffress of First Baptist Dallas, Jerry Falwell Jr. These are some of the guys who early on got behind him, and then in this charismatic space as well. Very early on, some of these charismatic preachers were sharing prophecies that they had. People like Lance Wallnau, prophecies that Trump, surprising as it may seem, was God's anointed one to save America.
On my podcast, The Rick Strom Show, which you all should go subscribe to, I interviewed author and professor Kristen Kobes-Dumais, who has a book, which we'll link down below, Jesus and John Wayne, How White Evangelicals Corrupted a Faith and Fractured a Nation. And her answers to many of my questions are daunting, to be honest with you.
So yeah, he wasn't Christian. King Cyrus wasn't, one of the God's chosen people, but God chose him to come in and save God's people. And that's where Donald Trump was just perfect, because he was better than a Christian to lead this nation in this moment, precisely because he was utterly unrestrained by Christian virtue. He would do whatever needed to be done, and that's what they wanted. We can use the term hypocrisy, but really what it does is it reveals an ends justifying the means mentality. And again, when you can say that the very fate of the nation is at stake, and whether God blesses or curses this nation, when you can say that religious liberties are hanging in the balance and they are coming for your children, you just amp it up, amp it up, amp it up, then yes, you need to do something drastic. And it doesn't matter what that person does to save you. In fact, again, the more ruthless, the more they're willing to thumb their nose at norms and civilities, the better they are. And again, it's crazy, but all the more evidence that God has chosen this man for this moment.
Mm-hmm. And it really shows how many on the religious right don't care, and or how they fell for a complete con man, how they carried out his favors because they truly do believe that he is the man for the job. The Philadelphia Eagles are being honored at the White House, yet one big story inside the story.
What a nice guy he is. I wanted to race him, but I decided not to do it.
It's Saquon Barkley hanging out with Donald Trump. Now, there are two ways to approach this subject.
Are you planning on visiting the White House next week?
Got it.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
You can be like that guy, Jalen Hurts, who reportedly, per Yamiche Alcindor's Twitter, a White House official confirms to me that the Eagles starting quarterback will not be visiting the White House when the champions come. The White House says Jalen Hurts and other players who can't attend had scheduling conflicts. Now, you could take the Hurts route or you could take the Barkley route, who fired back at his critics when all of these photos and videos started going viral. LOL. Some people are really upset because I played golf and flew to the White House with the president in all caps. Maybe I just respect the office. Not a hard concept to understand. Just golfed with Obama not too long ago and look forward to finishing my round with Trump. Now, you get out my mentions with all this politics and have amazing day. Let me just fire something off at Saquon. A brainstorming here, Do you respect the office of someone who doesn't? I'm really getting super tired of hearing about how we need to take an apolitical approach. When this man is coming for your rights, for my rights, for women's rights, for the rights of LGBTQ plus people, for the rights of completely innocent people, like a hairdresser who is in an El Salvadorian gulag because he has tattoos, which ICE and it seems DHS had no idea what they meant when really it was about his parents. When they doctor photos to send Kilmar Abrego Garcia abroad to that same camp, a death camp is what it is, and say he's in a gang when he's not, and they misrepresent his tattoos. How do you be apolitical? Like, I understand that there is a certain degree of wealth that excludes you from this, because the Trump administration is not going to go after a Saquon Barkley or a Steve Ballmer, but they are going to come after you and me. And how do we remain apolitical? Like, how do you exist in this environment? They're firing people who are in the FDA to test the milk so we don't potentially infect kids and adults. They're not testing for bird flu anymore. They're rolling back DEI initiatives. They're getting rid of people who are the overseers of enforcing the Civil Rights Act. Like, and then you just say, like, oh, you got to get all out of my mentions with all this politics stuff. When there is a man who is credibly accused of essaying over 25 women, and you go golf with them, let's say that wasn't the president. Let's say that it was not the president, but someone else. Would you have done it? If it was a person who essayed over 25 women and did all the things, let's say a lobbyist, there are rightful critiques here because it comes with the territory. It says something about the people that you surround yourself with, does it not? I think what this shows is when you have a certain amount of zeros in your bank account, you feel that not only are you immune from criticism, but that politics shouldn't be a thing because you don't feel the repercussions of those politics. That's why people are upset. Respect the office. He doesn't respect it. He doesn't care about it. It's a bad message. And it's one that I really hope people learn from and do not replicate. There was a story that we broke, that was broken, that we brought to you, of his fiance, Anna Congdon, who repeatedly and regularly used racial slurs, including the N-word, on her social media. And this was consistent. It was as consistent as Saquon Barkley doing something insane every Sunday on a football field. Over and over and over and over and over again. And some are making potentially, a false equivalency of, well, that's who she is, and she appears to be a bigot. So why would we be surprised that Saquon Barkley is hanging out with Donald Trump? I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying just remember part of the history. Noah McGee of The Root would write, not only is this bad because she's a white woman using the N-word, but Congdon has had 2 black children with the star running back, Jada and Saquon Jr. Then there was also this, which shows how incredibly tone-deaf Saquon Barkley is in needing the moment, and how he will always placate an apolitical stance. Here's what I mean. Excuse me. People Mag wrote earlier this month he would attend a tech conference where he wrote on Twitter that he had an amazing time. And who were some of those pictures with that he was in? Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. Again, the level of not understanding how big of a moment this is in our country's history. Like, if you went to a conference, right, and there was Nick Fuentes speaking, and then you took pictures, how would you feel? Because that is a guy that Donald Trump dined with, along with Kanye. He has white nationalists in his cabinet. He has the PayPal mafia running things. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out our clips on demand. Peter Thiel, David Sachs, Elon Musk, who gave a Nazi salute, in my opinion, in his cabinet. At least it seems. Seems he's running the shots, calling the plays. That also comes with the territory, man. It's just dumbfounding to me. If you're going to own it, just own it. Don't come at me with all this politics. What? How? Why? I would love to interview Saquon Barkley just to explore that point. Because I'm sure he would fire back, no, you guys are missing the point. I just golfed with him. Where did you golf with him? Bedminster. Oh, okay. Do you know how he built his entire business? Aside from going bankrupt 6 or 7 times. About how he takes advantage of people, how he stiffs people, how he tells them, will sue me. For example, an architect that helped draw up a clubhouse for one of his properties. How about when he puts his head on the pillow at night? Reportedly, there were books of Hitler's speeches by his bedside. Oh, you were at Bedminster. Isn't it at one of his courses where to get a tax break, he buried his first wife? You were on one of those grounds, potentially? There's so much here to work with, and it's just really disappointing to see in real time. Patriot Takes would also showcase the differences in Saquon Barkley's approach. He was tweeting about the protests, and then just some years later, it's don't come at me with all this politics stuff. So it's basically just when he dictates it, even though you are meeting with a president who is quite literally the embodiment of politics. And for what it's worth, showing this as well, and this is my final point, that the White House retweeted Barkley's message, which goes to show you they will use anybody and anything in order to push their agenda, no matter what it is. You quite literally said in your message, this is not about politics, and the White House retweeted you. Maybe it is time for a little self-reflection, but clearly, as we have seen, not going to take place. If you can and are willing, please become a paid member here at TYT Sports. And or go to tyt.com/join. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate it. Have a great day.